My name's Marissa Najarian, and I just do some programming work with ECSL, along with some other service learning consulting. But I don't have too many lofty credentials to share with you, other than today at security, he told me that I had the cleanest car of the day. So that's something. But I have had the experience of doing foundational service learning workshops here at the museum. So I hope that one of the contexts I can give to you today is to try to toggle between the lens of service learning and then the lens that the museum was offering us this morning. And so I'm really excited to have ECSL in this space to be able to do that. And Taninia, do you want to introduce yourself?
So my name is Taninia Hekimara, and I'm the Director of Admissions and Civic Engagement at the Oak School. I'm
I don't know why you look familiar to me.
Yeah, my mom placed your kids in Marvel. And my daughter graduated from Marvel.
Yeah.
Now I'm all off my feet. Reset, Tanya, reset. That's why I grabbed the coffee. So I'm also a JEDI professional. That's justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I've actually consulted with independent schools and organizations on how to create inclusive environments. So I joined the ECSL, planning team, just to be sure to add some more DEI to tie it in, because we can't do good service learning if we don't know the histories of the people that we're trying to serve and to be in relationship with. And so I'm honored to be able to be part of the planning. And I'm going to start by leading you through a place where we want to launch off from. And I too am going to use the lens. I like the witness lens. We just did some witnessing. And we did some debriefing, which is bringing it to the eye. And in our own experiences and how it made us feel. And I'm going to take us a little deeper into that. And so I have an activity that has 3 different parts to it.
Right, and so my connection to the museum that we'll look at through the day is in the timeline wall, there were those 3 lenses. There was the lens of diversity, there was the lens of rights, and there was the lens of intolerance. Today we're going to use the word injustice in this space because I think it takes it to more of the level of actions. We're looking specifically at voting rights, so we're going to use the word injustice. But we're going to use those 3 lenses to help process what we saw in the museum and what we can do here today within the space of engaging youth in democracy. And so, to me, this is the lens of diversity that we need to have when we begin within the service learning, the stages of service learning, within this investigation stage. Tanya is really going to show us how that DEI lens is so essential to the way that we investigate and who we're investigating and who we are bringing onto our team in the investigation stage. So let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to give you a handout. I want you to start by looking at it. I want you to take it in, and then I want you to mark where your identifiers are. So it's called historically possesses more privilege and historically possesses less privilege. So again, you're looking on your chart and you're identifying where you have more privilege and where you have less privilege. So after looking at what the impact is, discuss one of either your less privileged or more privileged selves, parts of you, and how this plays out in your life. So why do you think we started with where privilege lies? Yes.
I think often, sometimes, certain privileges go unchecked or unnoticed. So, and even for me, learning these terms now, I've seen this before at our school, but certain privileges that I had, I take for granted. And so this just gives you more insight into figuring out how to navigate them.
Any anything else anybody wants to add? What are other reasons why we might have started with where privilege lies?
To understand your own place in the story.
Very good.
And
And identity. Earlier, go ahead.
Because it will affect the dynamic we have here today.
Yes.
Yes.
Earlier, our facilitator mentioned that you know, that's where we have to start. We have to start with changing ourselves, right? And part of being able to change is to first notice where you are now, right? And some things can be changed and some things cannot. And so it's important for the perspective. In your packet, you'll see that there's a diversity wheel in there. And we use that diversity wheel with our 5th and 6th graders. As we start to train them to look at texts in just that way, so that they can identify where they are and who they are, and then they can look at the texts more critically. I think there's a, I'm sorry. It's okay. Then they can look at the texts more critically, and then they get an idea of where privilege is and where privilege isn't. And then we get to look at things and say, well, who's missing from this story? Who's missing from this room? Who wrote it? And who are they writing about? Who gets to tell the stories, right? And so I encourage you to think about ways of looking at identity before looking at things critically. So now that we know this, is there anything else that anybody, any ahas, anything they want to put into the room and share with the entire group? Your story, not someone else's story. Yes.
Just having to confront, preferably over and over and over again, that you just don't know the whole story. You only know your own. And even your own story can be mysterious to you in a lot of ways. You don't know what you don't know. You're going to have your own blind spots. And to not push against those blind spots, but to be like, this is a good thing. It's good that I'm facing my blind spots. It's good that I'm being forced to face my own ignorance, to face my own prejudice, even when, like, you walk through life thinking, oh, I'm not good.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to put something into the room? Yes.
Along those lines, something I've been thinking about a lot lately that this chart really drove home for me is just how, it's turtled all the way down, just how deep all of this stuff goes and how many layers there are to peel back. That, you know, I like to consider myself to be a progressive liberal person, and so for a long time, you know, gender inequality and racial inequality, those are front and center, and I know sort of the appropriate place for my political spectrum to be on that. But I remember having a real hard time being not as inclusive as I should have been when I first started to know trans people. And that was a big, for me personally, had to be a paradigm shift to, you know, learn new pronouns and new names. And now that seems like, why would anybody do anything else? And lately for me, it's been the able-bodied thing. I've been seeing a lot more, I live on Twitter unfortunately, but I've been seeing a lot more about able-bodied versus disabled. I was just reading something today about like the Crip caucus. Somebody was tweeting about, you know, all the disabled activists in Iowa right now trying to fight. And just that had been so not on my radar in the same way that a decade ago, trans people might not have been. And 2 decades ago, you know, I told my friends that they were gay on the basketball court or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So just how much more work, even if you think you're ahead of the 8 ball on this, how much more work and how many more people there are out there in the world that don't feel like they have these privileges, and that it's my, if I care about this at all, it's my responsibility to keep investigating that and hopefully pass some of it on to my students, but that's, I gotta do it first, otherwise.
There's a term woke which
I was trying not to say that.
I totally disagree, because woke means that we stay awake all the time. We should be saying, I'm waking up, because you wake up every day. And every day, you're learning a little by little. What you shared is everybody's journey. And that journey isn't from where the side of the paper that you're oppressed on, it's the other side, right? It's the other side where the learning happens. I mean, you have to learn about the side in which you have less privilege, but really being able to make visible the privileges that you have. And that's where racism, sexism, the isms, oppression, that's where it lives, in the invisibility of the privilege. When we talk about racism, who do we talk about?
People of color.
The oppressed. We start with the oppressed. We generally don't tell the story from the other way. These people did this to these people, and here's the repercussions of it. We start with these poor people. Look how oppressed they are. We're talking about the oppressed. And it leaves the privilege, it leaves the racism, it leaves the oppression invisible. So that's the point of diversity wheels, identity wheels. This chart is to make your privilege visible so that you can then do something about it. And that's what we're here for, right? We're here, it's a double whammy. Not only are we educators, but then we have to go and want to do service learning, right? And so we have to be very clear about where that is. And as you so eloquently mentioned, it's uncomfortable, because when somebody calls you on your privilege, where you have more privilege, it's been blind. That's why they call it a blind spot, because it's been invisible to you because you take it for granted. And mine is my able-bodiedness. I realize that I'm 52 years old and I'm extremely fit. I don't have to take any drugs. I've never had any serious injuries. And so I realize that in that, I make judgments about people because of my able-bodiedness. But the more I read about people who are not able-bodied, I realize that the majority of it isn't even anything that they've done. So why am I standing in judgment? And what is the system that is making people disabled-bodied, right? So the next part that we're going to do, you're going to have to get up. I'm going to start with one definition, and it's the definition of a friend. A friend is not somebody that you hang out at work only. She's my friend. A friend is somebody you have invited into your home, you have gone to their home, you've had drinks, you go to the baby showers, outside of a space. So if you only see your friend in church, they're a church friend, they're not a friend. Okay, so that's the only definition that I'm going to give you. And so this is bingo. I'm sure we've all been in enough professional developments to have done some kind of bingo, getting to know folks, trying to figure out who's who. I think I've done a zillion bingos. This is cultural diversity bingo. And yeah, you guys know how to do it. So I'm just gonna give it to you.